morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today, I'm excited, ladies and gentlemen. We got a new Zoroark to talk about. And for those of you that have been following this channel for a while, you might know I have a real soft spot for Zoroark. No, it's not Zoroark GX. Everyone played Zoroark GX, which made it boring for me. I didn't really play that card. What I did play a lot of was the Zoroark from Black and White. I got top 8 at the largest tournament in Europe with Zoroark from Black and White, and honestly, had I not attached a tool to the wrong Pokemon, I wish I was joking, I'd probably win the whole darn thing. That was dumb, alright? You know what's not dumb? This new Zoroark. This new Zoroark is not dumb. This new Zoroark is awesome. And I think we might be in a situation to make this a rather ridiculously good card. I've done a translation myself. As a record, I've not seen anybody else translate it, but it's fairly straightforward, I'm going to be honest with you. What we've got here is 2 colorless energy. This attack does 60 damage for each Pokemon EX and Pokemon V your opponent has in play. Very important to note, it is specifically Pokemon EX or V. You can see in the wording there, even if you don't read any Japanese at all, you can see in the wording there it specifically says EX and V. It's not talking about rulebox Pokemon. So if your opponent's got their old friend, let's go for Greninja, Radiant Greninja. Yeah, that's fine. Radiant Greninja is a Radiant Pokemon. It is a Rulebox Pokemon, but it's not an EX or a V. That will not attract the extra damage here. It is specifically EXs and Vs. But I'll tell you right now, we are in a situation where we can take an advantage of that. Oh, and also, by the way, as you probably saw on the thumbnail, there is a new artwork rare, illustration rare. We'll get to that one in a moment. But what we've got here is a Pokemon which seems very well suited to the particular metagame. Sooner or later, we're going to move on from Pokemon EXs. When we do, this card is going to be a lot worse. We ain't there yet, ladies and gentlemen. We ain't there yet. So that's absolutely fine. And this is the kind of card where you can see how good it is by just looking at deck lists. All you need to do is look at a deck list of things that are doing well at the moment, and you'll see how well this goes. Take something like Charizard, for instance. For argument's sake, let's go for Charizard. Good deck, sees a bunch of play. Well, they're going to need Charizard, and they're also going to need Pidgeot, and that's kind of the absolute bare minimum. The absolute bare minimum that they're going to need down. And if they've only got one Charizard down, KO it. If they've only got one Pidgeot down, KO it. Now, it does get a little bit awkward, because of course the pre-evolutions of those cards are not EXs. So what your opponent can do is just be like, ha 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 ha, joke's on you, I'm not evolving up. I am deliberately not going to evolve to give you an extra 60 HP. The thing is, these decks don't tend to play many stage 1s. Pidgeot, you almost never see the stage 1 Pidgeotto. And Charizard, you'll sometimes see one Charmeleon, but rarely more than one. Which means if your opponent wants to not evolve up, they're going to have to try and hold a rare candy and the stage 2 in their hand, ready to evolve. And that's when you play Eri. And that's the kind of thing you can do with this Pokemon. Eri, by the way, lets you discard 2 item cards in your opponent's hand. So now they're in an awkward situation. If they don't play the stage 1, they've either got to evolve it up, in which case you take advantage with Zoroark, or they hold the rare candy Pokemon in their hand, in which case you take advantage with Eri, and then KO their only Charizard, and then they can't rare candy because you've just gotten rid of their rare candy. It's not going to work all the time, but sometimes it is absolutely going to work. And then, of course, they've got their support Pokemon. Lumineon still sees a huge amount of play because it's a Pokemon that can search out a supporter card. And do you want to know a secret about Lumineon? Nobody wants to play Lumineon. Okay, fine. Occasionally Batcalibur decks because it's got a nice return to your deck attack to take your threat off the board, blah, blah, blah. But generally speaking, nobody wants to play Lumineon. You play one and you hope it's not your starting Pokemon. And when it is your starting Pokemon, it's a 2-prize liability. You don't want to play Lumineon. And that's important, because when your opponent knows you're playing Zoroark, they're going to go, well, I'm not benching Lumineon then, because that gives you an extra 60 damage. But they already don't want to bench Lumineon. So now they're in this super awkward position. I've got nothing, or I just really need a supporter. Well, I've either got to not get the supporter, that's a win for you, or play Lumineon and give you an extra 60 damage on Zoroark, that's a win for you. I love Zoroark. The other one here is Rotom V. Rotom V sees a huge amount of play. It's become very popular in a lot of decks because it draws free cards and ends your turn. But if you're needing to set up, like you do in these Charizard decks, then it's really, really good. And again, your opponent can go, well, I'm not playing Rotom, ha 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 ha. Brilliant, now your deck's worse. You're deliberately making your deck worse to spite me, but you're actually spiting yourself because now your deck's worse. And then, of course, there's a whole bunch of others. Mew from 151 sees some play as a nice little draw engine, as an example. And your opponent can always just not play them. But the thing is, they want to play them because that's how their deck works. It's very easy to look at a card like Zoroark and go, I'm just not playing my EXs then. But as I've hopefully explained, sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes it makes your deck work, and sometimes, like in the case of Rare Candy Stage 2, there are cards like Eri that you can really use to take advantage of that. If they've only got one Charizard out and a couple of Charmander, play an Eri before you take the KO. You might get very, very lucky. And then there's decks like Future Box, which basically almost always just play Iron Hand and Iron Crown with like a Miraidon or two in the early game. And what are they going to do? Try to go through the whole game with Miraidon? They'll get some bit of traction here and there, but trying to play the whole game with just Miraidon, not playing any Iron Crown down, not building up your Iron Hands, that is generally not a great way to play that deck. That usually doesn't work out perfectly, and that's when you come and start taking advantage. I am not saying this is a perfect card for every situation. I am saying it is a stage 1 that attacks for 2 colourless energy that can be genuinely great. Oh, there is a second attack here. Yeah, the second attack, 3 energy, 110, that is actually hot garbage. And the thing is, you don't even need to worry too much about the energy. You can use double turbo. Now, it will reduce your damage by 20, but you can use double turbo. It will work. We've got that new Janine card that I showed you the other day, that will attach 2 darkness energy, 1 to each of 2 of your darkness Pokemon. And if it attaches to the active, you get poisoned. So don't attach to the active, Zoroark. Boom, done, sorted, easy, next question. And of course, let's not forget that Dark Patch is still very much in the format. Oh, and as a side note, if you do use your Janine to attach to the active, you do then still have Binding Mochi, which of course means you do an extra 40 damage if you're poisoned. So all of a sudden, it's kind of 100 for the first EX or V and 60 after. And this adds up quickly. Your opponent's got 3 EXs in play and you use the Binding Mochi play, that's 220. That's basically any Pokemon V. 4 EXs or Vs in play, that's 240. That's ridiculous damage. And if they ever put 5 down, well, you can then, with Binding Mochi, legit hit 340, which will one-hit KO anything. Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a stretch sometimes to KO multiple prize Pokemon, I grant you. But then by the same token, you're 2-hit KOing, or you're taking out single prize Pokemon, or sometimes you will. And oh, actually, by the way, while we're here, you're hitting a not terrible weakness against things like Mew EX, for instance, against things like Gardevoir EX. This is legit. I adore this card. This is my kind of card. This is the kind of card which is very much like the Zoroark I fell in love with so many years ago, and I am absolutely in love. Speaking of which, Zorua, we've got a regular, and we've got an illustration rare by Rend, and I love both of these cards. I think both of these cards are brilliant. By which I mean I love Zoroark and I love the illustration rare by Rend. Regular Zorua, it's fine, but I have no real strong feelings one way or the other. It's not one of my favourite artists. It's quite adorable, don't get me wrong. it's just not particularly special in my eyes. But the Rend artwork rare absolutely is, and Rend has a style that is going to be quite familiar to you. You might recognise it, for instance, from the Paw Me illustration rare, or the Cutie Fly illustration rare. And of course, they originally came round on our radar because of the Arcanine from the illustration competition. Yeah, that's a pretty cool card now, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? A very cool card indeed. Very good artist, really distinctive, lovely style. This is just cool, honestly. Seeing them do an illustration rare makes me very happy. Mostly here, I'm happy about this Zoroark. I find it hard to overstate how much I love this card. And I know it's not good in every matchup. And I know even in the matchups it is good, your opponent might be able to play around it sometimes, but it is not always going to work. Oh, also, you know what really fun new card is going to be absolutely hilarious with this? I know some of you have already worked it out. It's such a good combo with Accompanying Flute. Look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and bench any basics you find there. So those cards like Luminion, for instance, or Rotom or Mew that your opponent might be trying not to bench so that you can't take advantage. Yeah, Accompanying Flute is awesome. I honestly think this has a really good chance of being very impactful without Accompanying Flute. But the problem is, if your opponent is deliberately not benching Pokemon that they want to bench for fear of increasing your damage, that's probably going to leave them with some bench spaces open. Or else they're playing this weird game where they're trying not to bench Pokemon that are EXs or Vs, but they're also trying to fill up their bench to play around Accompanying Flute. And you see where we're going with this. And they're trying to keep rare candy out of their hand. And Zoroark just seems to create a lot of problems. I'm giving it 5 Wassies. I might be overrating it. It might not be quite that good. I don't even care. This is a kind of card that I absolutely adore. And then I go and make a dumb stage 1 deck with a bunch of different attackers, one of which is this. And it makes me very happy indeed. That's what I think. I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And get shout-outs on the channel, like the lovely Uriel Rojas, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and is a very lovely person. So shout-out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.